Hi. It's been a while, but I have something that I want to talk about, so thank you for listening. Recently, I've been on social media and I've kind of had this message insidiously inserting itself into, various feeds. And I think it's spreading as a meme because there is a level of truth to it. But like most truth in this culture, it's only a partial truth. And it really needs to be flushed out by someone, I don't know, like me. I'm someone. So this message I've seen, I think the first iteration of it I saw was like a little meme infographic that said, "You're not psychic, you're just traumatized, cis." So there, it was gendered. We can talk about that nature of it. So it's directly, that cis word is definitely iterating that specifically women who identify as psychic, who also most likely do have some degree of trauma that they've lived through in their life. It's specifically a message to us. And there's a lot of things I have to say about it because it's very much a message to me that is stating conform. You're not special, conform. And I have to say, like, I'm special to me. Every individual should be special to themselves. And it's a really unfortunate thing in this culture that we are consistently expected to identify ourselves with our weakest points or the aspects of our lives that are horrible. And instead of identifying ourselves with what we've gained from these experiences, we're expected to identify with them. That's a problem. That's a very big problem in this culture, and it doesn't just relate to trauma. I see it come up with all sorts of different, just ways of being different, Consistently, we are expected to identify ourselves with the pain and never with the glory. And I think that's a serious problem because it is incredibly disempowering, isn't it? It is the case. Let me just say this, okay? Because this really gets into how well do we understand the spiritual nature of our existence. This culture wants us to completely disengage ourselves from spiritual awareness. And I think that's very important. And that's what that kind of thinking leads to. And because it is so simplistic, it is very seductive, right? It is very seductive to think in these simplistic ways. But the reality is, as any occult practitioner, any person who has any sort of occult practice will let you know, you don't gain knowledge, power, experience, right, through mundane experiences. You are put through challenges in life in order to become your greatest, most powerful version of self. And that's it. You don't develop something like empathic abilities, the ability to read people, to feel people, without having your boundaries totally fucking torn down, okay? That's the reality. And this isn't to say, like, or to justify or to excuse abuse, because I think that's also often levied when we talk about the process of alchemizing trauma and pain into power. You know, it's very often regarded as some sort of like dismissal, but I feel very strongly, you know, myself, that we have to do this work. We have to sit with and be with and understand the spiritual meaning, okay, behind our experiences. We have to put the challenging experiences in our lives into a bigger picture, into a story, because we are living legends, we are living myths, we are living out myth here and now. There is a place for the divine in every aspect of our experience, even the worst. And it is when we see that and recognize that in ourselves that we get to actually rise up out of it. I always go back to Persephone, right? I've always identified with her from a very young age. And this is why, okay? She didn't have a choice. She was drugged down into Hades to become the, you know, wife of a man she didn't know, living in the underworld. She was a creature of the land, of life, and she was brought into the underworld, and she had to live there. She had to cope there. She had to eat the food. And she did not let it consume her. She rather became someone that, because of who she was, because of what she had experienced, because of what she had been through, was able to become the voice of mercy in the darkness of the underworld. She was able to bring that to a place where it hadn't existed before. That's a meaningful story. You can't control what you've been through, but you can control who you are and how you let it impact you and affect you, and what you let yourself become and be in the world, and what you let the dark, arcane knowledge, the knowledge that many people don't want to face or deal with, what you let it be in your life and be in the world. You know, I wouldn't be able to work with or empathize with people the way I have for years. You know, being a tarot reader, you really get to know people, okay? I wouldn't have been able to do that work if I didn't know what it was to suffer, if I didn't know what it was to grieve, to have lost. How could I? If I didn't know what it was to be violated, to be in situations I didn't want to be in, if I didn't go through those experiences, I couldn't bring the level of empathy, the level of connection, the way I could deal with individuals on that like soul level. I don't feel that I would have had it in me to access that. It does not negate, you know, the being traumatized thing does not negate the power And we have a real issue, I think, with, in this culture, victims alchemizing their trauma and becoming powerful in spite of it. You know, we want to keep, there's a real palpable feeling of discomfort with that kind of rawness that just can't be, for some reason. It's like when Persephone came back, you know, to live, you know, with her mom above ground half of the year. She really didn't fit in anymore, you know. Once you see things, once you go through intensely karmatic, troubling experiences, once you go through spiritual initiations like this, it is harder to relate to people. And yeah, most psychics are in their own world a lot of the time. You know, the longer you have a practice, the longer you delve in, the longer you really go through these kind of transformations in your life, these intense transformations and experiences, the harder it does become to relate to people in mundane ways. Because I think, you know, what I really struggle with is, how do I interact with people now, like in a way that's, I feel like I can't interact with people a lot of the time in the ways that they expect me to, because I just want you to see my spirit. Is that so much to ask? But I get it. I get that there's truth in it. I get that people are annoyed sometimes by, you know, psychic women, you know. And I get that sometimes people use their gifts or powers in negative ways, you know. I have heard stories of, you know, people stating that, you know, I'm an empath, I can feel what you're feeling, and oh, you're throwing off a lot of bad vibes. You know, just because somebody has a gift doesn't mean they know how to use it either. And it doesn't mean they know how to discern where the feelings they're having are coming from either. That takes time, that takes practice, and that takes awareness. And not everybody who has psychic abilities, spiritual gifts, or powers is at a level of awareness about them. That takes, you know, time and practice, and it takes a lot. So I just want to say this to people out there. If you think that you're going to come into this knowledge, let's say you're just a normie, okay? You've had a nice life, nothing really bad's happened to you. I think it would be very, very difficult. Let me just say this. You don't come into this kind of knowledge without going through initiations, and those initiations are generally brutal experiences, and that's the way they manifest in this world. The way that it's written about in legend is that, you know, the hero goes on an underground journey, you know, goes into the underworld, descends, and comes back up. And some of us stay in the underworld longer than others. And some of us never really fully come back up. We all have a different path, right? But I think what we can do is be kind, and what I also think we can do is like acknowledge our own divinity in this life, that each of us has a level of divinity. You know, our spirit is animating our flesh, and it is a fight in this culture to keep our souls intact. And sometimes we have to go into the underworld to recover bits of our soul as well. I want to say that too, okay? People think, yeah, if you're psychic, if you're spiritually so enlightened, then nothing bad would ever happen to you. And it's just the opposite. It's just the opposite. It doesn't mean that you don't have wonderful experiences too, because you do. But knowledge does not come easy. Any knowledge, any true gnosis takes experience. It takes work, it takes experience. And I really feel very strongly, that we need to understand that and give people some compassion. And if someone is, I also just want to say this at the end too, if someone has told you they're psychic and is displaying a number of symptoms of being a trauma survivor, instead of making fun of them, you should try to help them. And actually help them, okay? Not just shame them or embarrass them, or, ambush them. Actually treat them like a human being, talk to them directly and help them, and not communicate in passive aggressive ways. But anyway, those were just my thoughts. What do you all think? Do you think that you can come into divine, arcane, occult knowledge without actually having to go through the spiritual initiations required? Is that what you think? Let me know. Actually, don't. Bye.